Okay, hello and welcome everybody. I have another demonstration. This time I'm going to show how to install a non-upgrade version of Windows 95 on top of MS-DOS and whichever variation of Windows 3.1, Windows for Workgroups that you may have installed. I will show you on the C drive that these do in fact exist. There's the DOS folder. That's MS-DOS 622, by the way, and then here's the Windows 3.1 folder. Okay. And so I'm going to run Windows 95 setup and show what happens when you have those already installed. Just ignore these error messages here. Alright. Click yes. And then you are greeted to this error message right here that tells you to obtain the Windows 95 upgrade. Well, I'm trying to install Windows 95 OSR2, which is an OEM version of Windows. There is no upgrade of that, right? The good news is there's a workaround for this, and it's actually really simple. So let's go back to the C drive in the Windows folder. And let's rename win.com to, I'm going to call it win.back. That is it. That's the only check that Windows 95 setup performs. There it is. Now you can install Windows 95 however you see fit. Now you see this note at the bottom. Like, it's almost like it knew that that was a thing. But so I actually tried installing Windows 95 from a hard drive earlier, and I kind of wasn't impressed with the speed, but that could very well be that I'm doing this on a Pentium 166, which is very different from the Windows 98 install demonstration I did. So I'm running this from, strangely enough, my actual Windows 95 boot disk. And I didn't get this option before. It only had network adapter. But I've never had any issues with that, like detecting anything. So while this is doing stuff, I would like to explain why OSR2 instead of like original Windows 95 or I think if you installed Service Pack 1 or whatever, that would make it Windows 95A. So I'm just going to call those old Windows 95. Comparing the two versions of Windows 95, I found that like obviously since it's older, the driver support is kind of suspect in the original Windows 95, and plus, like the display properties, like if you right click on the desktop, you couldn't really change like your video adapter in that as easily. You would have to like do that through Device Manager instead. I think the only thing you might have access to is the monitor, because I remember changing the monitor profile to plug and play monitor. It does add some cool new features. One of them is FAT32 support, which if you're going to be dual booting an old version of MS-DOS and Windows 95, you're not going to be able to do that anyway, but there's also those cool OpenGL screensavers. I'm personally a fan of the 3D Maze one because it kind of looks like a Wolfenstein 3D screensaver. That's what it looks like to me. But in all, it's just a little more refined, and I prefer OSR2 over original Windows 95 for all those reasons that I just mentioned. There's just one problem, and I will have to wait until I get to that point to demonstrate, but OSR2, as I mentioned, was an OEM release, and as such, it was only really intended for, computers that were new between 1996, the end of 1996, and like into 1998 before Windows 98 came out. So those were all fast computers, that was the Pentium with MMX technology and the Pentium 2. So that was all like pretty wild stuff back then. As such, I don't know if it was a bug or if it was intentionally made that way, but there's a gimmick where when you alternate between your previous version of MS-DOS and Windows 95, it automatically renames the, I'm just going to call them the core system files for loading MS-DOS, getting it to the command prompt. I honestly think this is going faster reading it off the CD than the hard drive. I could be crazy. I'll have to compare the two videos. But anyway, what happens if you have old versions of DOS and Windows and then you install OSR2 on top of them? If you press the F8 key when it says starting Windows 95, it'll bring up the menu and you can choose your previous version of MS-DOS. The only problem is when you're done doing that, you shut the computer down or you restart it to go back into Windows 95, you will be greeted to what I describe as the flashing cursor of death. The io.sys file for Windows 95 winds up in limbo. Like, it doesn't rename the file back when it's done. And that's the problem there. And there are solutions to that problem, but I'm a little fuzzy on the way to fix it when you do get the flashing cursor of death without having to like reinstall Windows and whatever. I did get it to work maybe once or twice, but this last time it didn't work. Hence why I just decided to reload Windows 95 again. I really wanted to see how fast it loads with the CD-ROM instead. So I don't know. I think it's loading faster, strangely enough. I don't even know the speed on the CD-ROM. It might be a 6x, I think, which was pretty quick for 1996 is when this machine was built. So while we're on that subject, let's talk about the specs here. So this is a Dell Dimension XPS P166C, which means it is a regular Intel Pentium running at 166 megahertz. When I bought it, it had 16 megabytes of EDO RAM. I have since upgraded it to 64, which is like a lot for one of these of that particular era. And the hard drive that I have in here, I think is supposed to be like a 2.5 gig, but since it's formatted FAT16, it's 2 gigabytes. That's the size of the partition. It did not come with the sound card. This was like a straight up business computer when I got it. And apparently the people that were selling it, they really wanted to get rid of it because I got it for $63 shipped. Like after shipping, it was only $63. And I credit this machine as being the one that started my retro PC addiction, because I have added, I don't know, like maybe 10 more since then, which is crazy, but oh well. Here we go, we're about to restart. Apparently I have an STB PowerGraph 64, that's S3 Trio 64 chipset. I'd actually forgotten the brand. Yeah. It copies over the autoexec and config.sys files from DOS. All that stuff's gonna get deleted first chance I get. I wish you could hear this hard drive thrash. It sounds angry. Alright, you see that flashing cursor? That's what it looks like when you screw the thing up. But it's still loading. Here we go. So we gotta let it detect hardware, and this will probably be like another couple minutes or so. It's in my experience that it usually doesn't have like a... Oh, you know why? It's because it used my old DOS CD-ROM driver. That's why. Yeah, normally you would have to skip that because it can't find the CD-ROM drive. That's funny. I didn't even think about that. So those were the video card drivers. You see the S3. So original Windows 95, if I'm not mistaken, doesn't have my video card drivers in it, but OSR2 does. So, like I said, it has better driver support. And it just stalls for a second here. There we go. And then there will be one more restart. Eventually. Set my time zone. Yeah, port. So it's not a Windows 95 upgrade, but it ports over all your program groups from Windows 3.1. That's goofy. Come on. Alright. And no printer. Restart. So under normal circumstances, I would show how it screws up, but I kind of don't want to, so I'll just show the two methods for how to fix it, or prevent it from happening. Oh, come on. There's the sound. So a few months ago, I went to like a computer parts sale and I bought an actual, like, one of those full-length Sound Blaster AW32 cards. I thought that was really cool. Let's see here. I want to open in the same window because that gets a little out of control when it opens everything in a separate window. And I personally like list view. So hang on, I want to fix something real quick like here. Funny enough, you can't press the Control-A shortcut to select everything. That's how primitive this is. Okay. Yeah, you don't need any mouse drivers or CD-ROM drivers or anything like that. And let's see here. Let's get rid of that. So let me clean this up real quick like. Okay. So I believe I alluded to the core system files that boot MS-DOS. Okay, so I'm going to do them in alphabetical order. The first one is command.com. That's the actual command interpreter, this thingy, DOS prompt. Okay, as you can see. Then there's io.sys, which is for your input and output, like those keys that I just randomly typed and, you know, I saw them on the screen. That's what that's for. And then there's msdos.sys, which in Windows 95, it's got several parameters here. I'm actually going to add one. I couldn't remember what it was earlier, but it's called boot menu. And I can't save it because it is read-only. So let's fix that. Set that back. Now if you look close, you'll see there's another command file there. It's called command.dos, io.dos, and msdos.dos. And then of course there's autoexec and config.sys ones as well. Those ones with the .dos extensions, if you could have surmised, those are for the previous version of MS-DOS. Let's get rid of that. So, the quick and easy fix for this, and I'll have to show what the file names become on the other side, but see this io.sys file, this is the Windows 95 one. I'm just going to create a copy of it. I'm going to name it winboot.sys. Okay. And now I will be able to restart and go into the previous version of MS-DOS. That boot menu thing that I added, you'll see what that does. It automatically brings up the menu that you would have to press F8 to bring up. But there it is, the previous version of MS-DOS. I'm going to load that, and as you can see, it says starting MS-DOS. So we're in the old DOS mode. And let's go back to the Windows directory. Remember that file I had to rename? Okay. So let's go back to the root directory. Look at that, it's not Y2K compliant. It's like less than 3, less than 0. It's kind of funny. Anyway, some of these files are hidden because they are system files. So I can actually fix that quite easily by doing that. Now that should all show up in File Manager. Okay. So you can see here there's autoexec bat, that's the DOS one, but then there's an autoexec.w40, and there's command.com, command.w40, and msdos.sys, msdos.w40. Now if you look here, there's those two files and that. And remember how I made a copy of that winboot.sys? That is what io.sys becomes when you're in your previous version of MS-DOS. It gets renamed to that. The problem is that it doesn't get renamed back to that. Okay? So the fix that I just applied here, if you call it that, is that this file was already created. So it left that file alone. If that makes sense. So let's exit out of here. Let's go back to Windows 95. And it will probably pop up like a file name error message, which we will see momentarily. Or maybe not. Okay. So I mean, really, that's like the quick and painless method for doing it. But there also exists a more elaborate method. And that will be done in the registry editor, which is under here. And there's some keys that need to be created, but first step, okay, is let's go to io.dos, and you want to rename this. You're going to rename these two files to the IBM PC DOS file names. So it's going to be called ibmbio.com. And then the MS-DOS.DOS file gets renamed to ibmbos.com. Okay? So there's our Windows 95 ones. They're still there. So let's go back to Registry Editor. And I'm going to create new key. And the key is going to be called rename files, like so. And then in the rename files key, we're going to create another key called boot. All right. And so we want to change the default string to C:\\. Okay. Now I need to create a string value called ibmbio.com. Okay. And then go in here, and for the value data, enter ibmbio.com, comma 7. All right. And then create another string called ibmdos.com. And the value data is ibmdos.com, comma 7. All right. And that is it. In this winboot file, I can actually get rid of. Okay, so let's try it out. Let's see what happens. Okay, let's just run this just for posterity. Okay, exit out. And I will reset. And there is Windows 95. Pretty cool, huh? So that's how you can make Windows 95 OSR2 dual boot with MS-DOS.